Times like these, I really miss my Santa hat. Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to the Reindeer Readathon TBR. I have waited all year for this. The Reindeer Readathon, if you are already aware, is created by Eric from Break Even Books. This is the 4th year that it's running, and it was all based on the Reindeer from Santa's Sleigh team, and I loved this last year, and not just because my team won, but there's so much fun stuff going on, and obviously I'll have the formal announcement video down in the description below if you would like to check some of this out. I am Team Candy Cane this year. No shade to Team Stocking. I loved being on it last year, but you know, you gotta have those randomized teams, so I'll get really into the Candy Cane imagery this year instead. Now, normally I wait a little bit longer before creating the TBR, but this one I had to get into it as soon as possible because it's not just the Reindeer Readathon I'm worried about. I also need to fit in all of the rest of the books for my Pop Sugar Reading Challenge. If you're unaware, the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge is a year-long reading challenge created by the kind of like lifestyle media brand Pop Sugar. I have tried it so many times and I almost always give up somewhere around the midpoint, but like in October I sat down and I realized that I had only about like 10 books left in it and I could actually make it work. So on top of all the regular prompts for the Reindeer Readathon, I also had to fit in other prompts, which means if I end up DNFing a book, I'm extra screwed this year. But let's jump right in. What am I reading? The first prompt is Dasher. This is kind of a choose your own prompt. You must either finish a series, retry a previous book that you put down, or a short story or novella. Now, I'm not close to finishing any series right now, and I don't really want to add a short story or novella because I have a couple other shorter books on the list. So I decided to go for Valkyrie by Meg Ludwa as my retrying a previous DNF. This is a sci-fi dystopian all about this woman who is living the good state-sponsored life as a doctor and niece of the Grand Chancellor and ends up getting kidnapped by the rebellion and finds out that, oh no, government bad actually, and falls in love with one of the hot rebel fighters. And honestly, the premise itself I'm kind of like about because it's so overdone at this point that you really need to bring something specific to it. And I haven't gotten far enough in the story in the couple times I've tried to read it to see that yet. I'm really just here for the sapphic romance. Sapphic romance is why I'm here, because it looks like it's going to be, you know, soft-hearted doctor meets like hardened warrior, and here for it. So I think part of the problem that I haven't gone through this is it's very long. This is also my pick for the bonus prompt of read a book over 500 pages. And so the romance is a slow burn. And so what I want is very slow in coming, and the thing I'm neutral about is a lot of what I get. So I'm hoping that if I just push through and tell myself the sapphic WOW romance will be coming, that I can make this one work. Thankfully, I also have a different book that fits both retry and over 500 pages that I might switch to if I need to DNF, but this is the one I'm focusing on for right now. The next prompt is Dancer, a cursive, flowy, elegant font on the cover. I thought this one was going to be so simple. I was like, oh yeah, I gotta have tons of books with the fancy script on the cover. I did not. I don't know if it's more rare than I think it is, or my brain just gravitates towards books with more blockier text, but it took me a bit of searching to find one. But I eventually found I Kissed an Earl and I Liked It by Mary Farmer. This is a Regency romance. I always keep one of these on the back burner to pull out in readathons because for me, these are one of those, you know, read it in a day types. And this is all about a woman whose brother has decided that he is going to marry off all of his younger sisters in arranged marriages. And our protagonist of this one is the first. She does something to get into a scandal. The synopsis is very vague and ends up being, you know, arranged married to the dude that is like the other side of the scandal. Again, very vague synopsis. I don't foresee this having like a big effect on me. I don't foresee this being like a favorite, but I love having a good Regency romance as a palate cleanser in a readathon, especially when you're reading so much. And also, low-key, I might have to read other books this month, so having one more that I can read in a day is always a plus. The next prompt is Prancer, a book with your favorite season or the favorite season's color scheme on the cover. I fudged this one a little bit because my favorite season is spring, but I don't actually like that many spring color schemes because I don't do pastels. And while I do like some flowers, I like more bright colors in them. So I was kind of at a loss. And then I remembered that I have a book that has a lot of pink on the cover. And I'm like, pink's like basically spring, right? That's fine. So we're going to read Bonds of Brass by Emily Skretsky. This is, it was advertised to me as a Finn-Poe type story. Finn-Poe being the ship name for Finn and Poe from the new Star Wars trilogy. And I was like, yes, I shipped to them. They should have been canon. So this is all about a young man who is in this Empire's military academy and discovers that his roommate is the heir to like the Empire throne. And so people are trying to kill him and there's a rebellion and it's raw. I don't know where that came from. So I am intrigued by this. I'm a little bit nervous because I've been burned so many times by non-queer men writing MLM romances in the past. However, as far as I can tell, it looks like the author has an investment in like general queer culture. So I'm willing to give it a go, and also because, again, it's Finn-Poe. But I am intrigued, and if it's good, I will definitely continue with the trilogy. The next prompt is Vixen, a book that you think might be overhyped. This one I actually combined with my Pop Sugar Reading Challenge because I realized that the only prompt I didn't have a pick for in that left was the social horror prompt. And so I was like, let's combine them. Let's find a social horror that I think might be overhyped. And for this one, I picked The Stepford Wives by Ira Levin. It's not necessarily that I think this one is specifically overhyped, but we'll get into it. So this is all about a young woman and her family who move into this new town, Stepford, and she starts realizing something strange is going on with the women around her. She starts wondering if the men are doing something to their wives in this little town. It is considered feminist horror, and I don't think that it necessarily is universally overhyped because of when it came out. This book was published in 1972, right as second wave feminism was starting to pick up. It was probably pretty groundbreaking in its day. So my thinking is, does it still hold up as a part of the literary canon in the modern day? And obviously most people have probably never read the book. If they think Stepford Wives, they think the movie. And I have not seen the movie. Maybe I'll watch it after I've read this, but I'm wondering, is this a book that was incredibly poignant and groundbreaking for its day that we've kind of moved on from in the canon, or does it still have hyper relevance today? And also, it's only like 150 pages. So, really, really happy to add another short book to the list. Up next is comet, an astronomical word in the title, meaning things like sun, moon, stars, that kind of stuff. I thought I would have to fudge this, but then I did some Googling and I found out, no, I'm right, which is great. So for this, I am picking Unravel the Dusk by Elizabeth Lim. This is the sequel to Spin the Dawn, which, again, was advertised to me as Project Runway meets Mulan. And I can't really talk much about what's going on in here because it is directly affected from things that went on late in the first book, but this was my pick for the duology, and so I knew I had to read this one regardless, and I was like, oh, does dusk count as an astronomical word? And so I Googled it, and yeah, it's based on the sun being low enough towards the horizon that there's some darkness, but not so much that there's none. Like, apparently it's like a kind of twilight, like it's a whole thing. So I was like, yes, astronomical word, it counts. I'm really excited because, things hit the fan at the end of the last book. A lot's going on, and our protagonist has gigantic hurdles to go over in this one. And so I think I could risk a book hangover with this one, even though it's only a duology, and I read the first one not too long ago, but there's always that risk when it gets that intense, so I might end up having to like push this later on in the month, like when I'm on like holiday break to avoid crashing, but you never know. I am super excited. Up next is Cupid, your favorite trope. This one, I looked back through my Pop Sugar reading picks and I said, do I love any of these? Are any of these my favorite? And I said, yes, you. So I will be reading Angels Before Men by Rafael Nicolas. This is a queer retelling, one of my favorite tropes, about the fall of Satan. So it's for the girlies with the religious trauma, but this is literally following Lucifer in heaven, falling in love in a queer romance and being cast down to hell. So, a little bit intense, but this was my pick for the Pop Sugar prompt for a book that was blurbed by one of your favorite authors, and this was blurbed by Freddie Smoon, who also writes genderqueer and general queer Latin works. And so if he was like, yes, I like this, I was like, all right, I'm gonna give it a shot. But I do expect this to be a little bit intense. I have heard really good things about it for people who have read it so far. People saying like, if I hadn't already had a sexual awakening, this would have been it, type of stuff. So I am really hyped for it. I'm really excited. I just, again, probably got to be in a good headspace for it. Up next is Donner, a book that you want to read, but you're not a fan of the covers. So I went back to my Pop Sugar picks and I said, do I dislike any of these covers? And yes. So for this one, I am reading My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. I know the cover looks that way on purpose. But here's the thing. I don't like 80s aesthetics all that much. I know that's like sacrilegious for a millennial to say, but I'm not the biggest fan. And I am still intrigued by this. I picked this for my book set in the 80s prompt from Pop Sugar. This is all about a pair of friends who are entering high school, and a protagonist notices that her friend is suddenly acting very strange and distant. And so she decides that her friend must be possessed and she must do something about that. I haven't read a lot of exorcism stories, actually. And I'm not entirely sure this is an exorcism story because the synopsis makes it sound like it's not confirmed, but then other people are like, no, this is definitely a horror. So I don't really know. I've heard a lot of conflicting opinions on Grady Hendrix. He seems to be one of those love or hate authors, and I don't read a lot of horror, but I'm still like hoping this works. Like, I don't want to dislike books in a readathon. That makes it so much harder. And again, if I end up DNFing this one, I had to find another book set in the 80s that I dislike the cover. So I'd rather just have this one work. Up next is Blitzen, and this prompt is a little bit more complex. You random number generate a number 0 to 9, and you have to find a book that ends with that page number. So I did the random number generation, and I got 3, and I just started pulling out books. Which of these page numbers ends in 3? And I found Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim by Robert C. O'Brien. This is 233 pages long, at least this copy is. You might remember this title from the movie that may or may not have traumatized you as a child, but this is all about a widowed mouse who needs to move her family to their summer home or face death, but her youngest child is sick with pneumonia and can't be moved. So she calls on the Rats of Nim to help move him. I have no idea how similar this is to the movie. It could be a lot more lighthearted. They don't really even talk about anything like, labs and testing and stuff in this book. I don't even remember that much from the Rats of Nim movie because I grew up more on the really crappy, but I still loved it, sequel, Rats of Nim 2, because it was a musical. So this one might be a little bit dark, but it is still a children's book and it is still 233 pages, and I need something a little bit shorter on my TBR, so I hope this one goes well. The last prompt, Rudolph, start a new series. This was an easy pick overall, so I didn't really focus on this one. Instead, I went with one of the much harder prompts to fill, and that was the bonus prompt. The Reindeer Readathon always has 3 bonus prompts, and 2 of them are usually pretty simple for me to fill. The read a book over 500 pages, tricky but not impossible. Read an ebook. That's like breathing for me. Half of what I read is an ebook form anyway. That's whatever. But then the third bonus prompt is an audiobook. If you've been around my channel for a hot minute, you know that me and audiobooks have a little bit of a contentious relationship. It's a struggle. If I want to listen to an audiobook, I have to literally rearrange my daily life to make it work. I have to wait until I have a lot of housework to be done and then do it all while listening to the audiobook. It is so hard for my brain to focus on purely audio narrative format. I can do podcasts, but trying to follow a narrative with descriptions. Oh, descriptions always get me in audio format. So I went to my Audible, what was left of my Audible, and see, did I have any leftover books from, getting credits back in the day? And I found Starfall by Jessie Kwok, which is the first in a series. But in all honesty, I picked this more because the audiobook is short. It's only a little over 2 hours, about like 100 pages, I think. So this is all about a young woman who is kidnapped, and she is deaf and caught up in this horrible prison. And her godfather, who also is like an actual mafia boss, but like he's her godfather in that her parents picked him as like a protector type, and you know what I mean. He must basically come and rescue her, but the only way to rescue her is to let his wife's killer go. I don't know exactly how. The synopsis doesn't make that explicit, but more than anything, it's an audiobook I had that was short, and it was the beginning of a series. So I can like set up a game of Minecraft and Terraform for 2 hours to get a listen to. I can do that. And then if I really end up liking the book, I probably will get like ebook versions of the rest of it, because it's just, I don't understand how other people are so like enriched by audiobooks. Like I get that they are, and it's valid reading obviously, but like it is so hard for me. It's so much harder than reading regular books. That's what's going to trip me up. But I did it last year. I got the audio prompt done last year, so I'm sure I can do it again. Whew. I've been talking for so long, my voice is starting to go. So are you doing the Reindeer Readathon? What team are you on? Are you also struggling with audiobooks? I can't be the only one, I swear. Do you have any fun kitschy holiday reads that you're interested in for the month of December? I want to fit in at least like one of those. I don't know. I might be setting myself up for failure with this one. Regardless, thank you so much if you've watched this far. I'm really excited for another readathon, and this one was so much fun last year with all the trivia stuff. So if you're interested in doing a readathon, I would highly suggest it. One of my favorites, one of the best readathon discords I've been on. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.